Hi, I'm Chris Evert, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the superstars of women's tennis. This is a very exciting time for women's tennis because we have so many talented players with different styles hitting the ball harder than ever. They're great to watch, and you can learn a lot from them. Looking at the top players in today's game, it's clear that the women have wonderful variety, power, grace, and elegance. They're superior athletes and have lifted the game to a very high level. But while the best players in the world win with different playing methods, they share the same desire to succeed. Here's a racket used in the old days, back around the turn of the century. It was not the same game back then, with the long dresses, the hats, the high-button shoes, the corsets, and the bonnets. It's amazing that the players could cover the court, but they sure did. Looking at these all-time great players should give you a good idea of how the game has evolved from the 1920s until today. Suzanne Lenglen was like a French ballerina when she dominated tennis in the 1920s. It was a sport which was clearly played at a slower pace in those days, but all of these champions competed with extraordinary intensity, and they kept the game moving forward throughout the years. I'm not sure I recognize that last player, but she sure looks familiar. Tennis was a pretty gentle game in those days, but a very serious game these days. And the top players have learned how to take very good care of themselves. They're training harder off the court, working out more in the gym with the Stairmaster and other activities, and trying to eat sensibly. They know each other's games inside and out, and they have what it takes to win because they've given so much of themselves to reach their goals. Let's look at the best players in the women's game today to find out what has made them the superstars of our sport. Monica Seles is a great champion for many reasons, but what makes her unique are her devastating ground strokes, which she hits with two hands off both sides. Monica is very smart in understanding herself and her game. Let's listen to her thoughts on her success, which brought her 8 Grand Slam titles from 1990 to 1993.
I think you just got to keep practicing as hard as you did before. Not get it too big of a head now that you're number one and you think, hey, you know, it's going to continue always like this. You even got to almost practice kind of harder to stay there. And I always give pretty much 100% into each shot. And, just go for your shot. That's basically my philosophy.
I know how tough it is to play Monica. She beat me to win her first professional tournament in Houston in 1989. But let's hear from some of the other players about what makes Monica so difficult to beat.
Well, against Monica, I definitely have to use my slice backhand to keep it low because she has both-handed forehand backhand, and that's why I need to get her a little bit out of balance, out of the control that she has. And then you shouldn't try to play too many ankles against her because she can use that very well.
Arantxa Sanchez Vicario is one of the greatest competitors in our game, and she really uses her head against everybody she plays.
Against Seles, you really have to be very consistent. I mean, she puts a lot of pressure on you because she has a great right arms and she hits the ball very hard. But you really have to change the pace of the ball, you know, moving the ball around and be aggressive when you have the time. Like this, she's not in position to hit the ball and then she's in trouble. I mean, and you also have to have a good serve to play against her and be aggressive all the time.
Steffi and Arantxa look for ways to bother Monica from the baseline, but my old friend and great rival Martina Navratilova has other ideas about how to get past Seles.
Monica beats people from the baseline. She basically is hitting winners from the baseline. She doesn't come to the net. For me, when I play her, I just you have to serve well because she returns so well, and take advantage of any opportunities. She doesn't give you very many.
You've now heard from 3 of the top players about the different game plans they have against Monica, but they'd be the first to admit that even the best strategy won't necessarily work against Monica if she is at the top of her game.
Well, I practice mostly with my dad, you know, in Florida. He's the one who kind of tries to improve my game, you know. Sometimes I do listen to him, sometimes I don't. You know, it's very different when your dad is your coach, but kind of when we go on the court, we try to put that aside and just as a coach and a student relationship.
The unique part of Monica is obviously the way she hits the ball. She hits the ball 2 hands off both sides. She's left-handed, so the serve is different. Only Martina and Monica in the top 15 are left-handed. And she hits the ball with power off both sides like nobody. Graf has huge power off the forehand, but not so much off the backhand. Seles doesn't leave you alone on either side. It's hard to get away from her.
In the final analysis, you can learn a lot from Monica. Her style may be unorthodox, but she drives through the ball so well with her ground strokes. Let's take a last look at her backhand. Watch how she gets her racket back early, how she turns her shoulders, how early she takes the ball, and how well she follows through. Whether you have a 1- or 2-handed backhand, you can copy her in these areas. If you look at the sequence of Monica carefully, you'll see her excellent preparation. This allows her to meet the ball out in front of her body. She does not have an exaggerated low to high swing because she hits her strokes almost flat with very little topspin. Monica shows you with this backhand that no matter how hard you hit the ball and whatever your style, the basics of being ready early and finishing your stroke are still most important. So that sums up Monica Seles. She did not become #1 in the world without putting in a lot of effort and deserving her success. And I guess I could say the same thing about Steffi Graf, who won the Grand Slam in 1988. Steffi is a wonderful athlete, perhaps the best on the tour. She's built her game around her big forehand and her serve, the 2 main weapons which have made her what she is. Naturally, when someone has two strengths like Steffi's serve and forehand, you look for a weakness elsewhere. So the players have tried to pick apart her backhand, which is consistent, but not nearly as threatening as her forehand.
My strategy is pretty much the same against everybody. With somebody like Steffi, I attack more to the backhand because her forehand is so much better than her backhand. But most of the other players are pretty even on both sides. But it's not that much of a difference like it is with Steffi. So you have to just attack both sides as well as down the middle. And for me, the strategy is always the same as attack, come in and put pressure on him.
Joe Fernandez uses a tactic against Steffi, which I found effective when I played her.
You know, you try to attack her, you try to come in and make her pass off her backhand. I mean, I think everybody knows that's her weaker side. It's hard to execute doing that, but you know, I think a lot of players are finding out that, you know, you have to hit to her best shot to open up the court to come in on the other side.
But no matter what you try to do against Steffi, you always have to be prepared for her to get to you with her speed. Monica points out Graf's quickness as one of her best qualities.
She's very fast. She and Arantxa are probably one of the fastest players on the tour. Her serve is, I think, a great advantage also. And her backhand is very tough. And, you know, I think she's coming in also volleying quite a few times. So she's just an incredible athlete.
Steffi is a hard worker and is constantly looking for ways to make her game better. She has a positive attitude and enjoys the challenge of expanding her game.
I work a lot on coming into the net right now. I think that's what I've taken care of a little bit more than usual. And as well as playing in the corners. Usually when I work with Heinz Günther, who's my coach, he stands in one corner and I got to play from whichever side, either forehand or backhand, continuously in one corner, so I get a lot of placement.
Let's look at Steffi's forehand one more time. She has made the shot her biggest weapon, and it's one of the best forehands we have ever seen in women's tennis. But as you look closely at her stroke production, keep in mind that Steffi is very unusual. She does not get her racket back early the way we have all been taught to do. She does get her shoulders around and her feet into position, but look how late she takes the racket back. This is what makes her so amazing, because almost anyone else would make contact with the ball much too late if they prepare just like Steffi. The thing to watch that makes her so special is how she accelerates the racket so rapidly with the late backswing, and how beautifully she ends up timing the ball. And her follow-through is so fluid on this flat stroke that her control and accuracy are excellent. So remember, you can make the forehand a weapon like Steffi, but I'd recommend getting your racket back earlier. Steffi has always been one of the most disciplined players, and she really likes to play her matches at a fast pace. She probably takes less time in between points than anyone out there. This helps Steffi to establish a rhythm and to set the tempo in her matches. She is respected by all of the women for her straightforward personality, and she has learned to handle her losses as well as her wins. I admire her professionalism. Gabriela Sabatini made her mark at almost the same time as Steffi Graf in the mid-1980s. I remember playing her in the final of the Family Circle Cup at Hilton Head. She was only 14. I won, but it was clear even then how good she was going to be. Bud Collins greatly admires Gabby for her unique qualities as a player and as a personality.
And then you have the pearl of the pampas, the divine Argentine Gabriela Sabatini. It's just like saying a fine wine when you roll that name on your lips. Gabriela Sabatini. And she just has everything. She has wonderful strokes, hits the ball like no one else. She has that Latin look when she's in danger, and it just, you wish that Hemingway were still around to write about Gabriela Sabatini.
Gabby stands out from everyone else because of her heavy topspin off both sides. This has been her trademark since the beginning of her career. But in recent years, Gabby has added some elements to her game, and this has made her a better all-around player. Let's get her thoughts on how she has grown as a player.
Well, I'm just still trying to work on coming to the net a lot and being aggressive, and also on my serve a lot, which has improved a lot. I feel much better. I feel more confidence with it, and I think those are the things that I want to improve more.
The big change in Gabby came about in 1990 when she won her first Grand Slam title, the U.S. Open. Much more than she ever had before, Sabatini started coming to the net on every good opportunity, and she showed how well she could volley once she got up there. This new attacking style was the difference as she surprised Steffi Graf in the final that year. Pam Shriver is very impressed by what Sabatini has managed to achieve by altering her playing style. Pam makes some very good points about Gabby.
She had a big breakthrough because she was willing to change her style. She was willing to come to net and use her reach and her good athletic ability. She has great hands up at the net.
While Gabby has made these great improvements in her volley, the players feel she has one weakness left.
You know, Gabby's pretty much an all-around player. She does everything well. Her weaker shot probably is her serve, so that's probably the shortest ball you're going to get in a rally. So I think you try to attack that. You try to attack her serve. So it's important not to get stuck behind the baseline and hit the ball really high. So try to hit the ball on the rise as much as you can off her shots.
Jennifer Capriati has had many excellent matches against Gabby.
I try not to let her dictate the points. Not let her run me from side to side with that heavy topspin. So, I try to just keep her moving.
It's hard to pick one shot which sets Gabby apart, but her topspin backhand is one of her best shots because it's so natural. If you have a lot of topspin in your game or want to learn to develop it, examine this sequence of Gabby. It starts with a good shoulder turn, then you'll see an extreme low-to-high movement of her racket head as she sweeps up and over the ball. What makes this such a consistent shot for Gabby is the trajectory. She can clear the net by a wide margin, and the ball will still dip and land safely in the court. The follow-through for Gabby on this heavy topspin backhand is very high. Notice her weight transfer as well. Remember, if you want to develop a topspin backhand like Sabatini's, it will require a lot of practice and repetition to get the timing right. If you can master this shot, it could add a lot to your game. Arantxa Sanchez Vicario is one of the greatest competitors in our game. She gives everything she has in every match. She simply loves to play tennis. Bud Collins describes Arantxa very well.
She's sort of a guiding light of this game, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario, so filled with everything you think of as Spanish. She's practically a fandango, a dancer out there, and she just has all this bubbly effervescence.
Arantxa comes from a great tennis family. Her two brothers, Emilio and Javier, are very successful on the men's tour. She is a very solid baseliner who will not hesitate to finish a point off at the net when she has the chance. Arantxa has very good ground strokes and an exceptional two-handed backhand, but she is also an intelligent match player.
I know when I have to change the pace of the ball and which strategy I have to play. So I'm very quick mentally and also physically. So I think that I'm a good fighter and everybody can see when I play all the matches.
When the players walk on court against Arantxa, they know how hard they'll have to work to beat her. That can really work in Arantxa's favor, especially in long three-set matches.
Physically, she's in very good shape. She's very quick on the court, and she's a very big fighter. You have to play very well to win a point, and that's why it makes it so hard to play against her.
Pam Shriver has noticed something else about Arantxa, which makes her one of the most consistent of all the players.
Footwork, tremendous. Changes direction beautifully, low center of gravity, so that's a help.
Arantxa is dangerous on almost any surface, but she is at her very best on clay. And it was on that surface where she won her first major title at the French Open in 1989 when she was only 17. She made a spectacular comeback from 5-3 down in the third set to beat Steffi Graf in the final. Certainly, Arantxa will always remember that comeback.
7-6, 3-6, 7-5.
The most important thing was to start well in the first game of the first set, because if you start hard, you know, and be 1-0, 2-0, then she would be afraid because she was winning always very easy, you know. Put pressure on her, and like this she can, you know, see that she had the pressure and she has to do something else, and I was not gonna lose that match.
It's time to close this segment on Arantxa with a look at her best shot, the two-handed backhand. With the popularity of the two-hander in today's game, I'm sure many of you could use Arantxa as a good model for your backhand. Arantxa has so much energy on the court that she can't wait to hit her next shot. So recognize first how quickly she gets ready and how good her balance is. The two-hander is easy to maintain because it doesn't require a lot of feel or touch. But as Arantxa demonstrates here, you can go a long way as long as you keep it simple. Notice that Arantxa gets a moderate amount of topspin on her backhand. She can disguise the direction of the shot easily with the two hands, and her follow-through is smooth and natural. If you want to copy Arantxa's backhand, try to focus on the simplicity of her stroke. Her swing is low to high, but not as extreme as Sabatini because there is less topspin. Finally, watch how quickly she gets back into position to play her next shot. Arantxa is willing to work on her weaknesses, but she wants to make her move from a consistent top 5 in the world player to #1. But to her credit, she is realistic about what it will take to get there.
I have to improve some things on my game, and then also I have to win more tournaments to be #1. But I'm not in a hurry. I mean, I know that the way I'm working, I'm doing so well so far that I'm in the right position and the right way to keep being #1. But I think that I can be there, and I have a lot of chances to be there.
No one in the women's game has been a superstar longer than Martina Navratilova. The 1990s is her third decade as one of the great players. Of today's champions, Martina is the only one left who is a true serve and volleyer. Beyond that, she is a great all-around player. Her ground strokes are not perfect, but they more than back up her strengths on the serve and volley. Her confidence comes from knowing that she is so well-rounded.
My forehand's better than my backhand, but it's not a big weapon. I don't have a big weapon any one shot. Perhaps my first serve is probably my biggest weapon. But, you know, I can still come in and put pressure on people from the net. So I don't know if it's any one shot.
I know firsthand how hard it is to defend yourself when Martina is serving well. With that wonderful left-handed serve, she can pull you off the court, go into your body, and dominate a match. Jennifer Capriati explains the difficulty of dealing with Martina's serve.
The main thing to do against her is to return well, because she's got a killer serve, and she's very quick, you know, with the volleys, and so it's hard to pass her.
Bud Collins has followed Martina's career as closely as anyone. He loves to see her still up there competing as one of the top players in the world.
Then you have this wonderful woman off to the rear, just stepping in every once in a while to show the kids it's not their game, named Martina Navratilova. And she has so much panache because she speaks several languages. She's given up her life to trade countries. Who's a wonderful athlete, probably the best athlete of any of them. And she just stands, to me, above everybody.
Earlier, Martina talked about her tactics when she plays Steffi. Now let's hear what Steffi has to say about playing Martina.
You gotta try to keep her at the back as much as you can, which is very difficult, but as well as coming maybe once in a while on her backhand, or use your own serve to get her out of the court, and try to use the court as well as you can.
Like Steffi, Monica Seles has a lot of respect for Martina.
I grew up watching Martina a lot, and I truthfully never thought that I'll get to play her ever. I thought, you know, she would be retired by now. She's a very tough player. You know, people think that because she's getting older that she's not as a good player as she was before, but I still think she is. She's just an incredible athlete. Her serve and volley game is, I mean, I wish I could just have a little part of it.
Probably the most intimidating part of Martina's game is her great left-handed serve. But as a final lesson from her, I urge you to look again at her volley. Of all the top players, she is still the best at the net. Everything she does is so compact. She doesn't waste any motion when she is hitting a volley off either side. She takes a short backswing and meets the ball out in front of her body with her shoulders turned. The other things to recognize as you watch her at the net are her firm wrist and her slightly open racket face, the two big factors in giving her control of the volley. If the wrist isn't firm, the volley will either fly over the baseline or fall into the net. And if the racket face isn't open, particularly when the ball is low, you'll have trouble getting the ball to clear the net. Keep this image of Martina volleying in your mind because she is always aggressive, quick, and consistent at the net. Martina is calm at this late stage of her career. The pressure on her is different from the way it used to be when she was #1 in the world for so long in the 1980s. But probably one reason why she is so relaxed now is she knows she has taken such good care of herself. She has set an outstanding example for all of the players with her fitness and her concern for a good diet.
Because of my age, I really have to pamper my body. More massages, I've had to have osteopathic care constantly, otherwise the joints just don't work anymore. I cannot do the same training I did 10 years ago. It's not possible physically. But I think the biggest thing is people still don't eat properly. You know, you are what you eat. I mean, you don't put regular gas, leaded gas in an unleaded car. And, you know, I see Agassi's munching hamburgers before a match, and I'm like, oh, he's crazy. You know, he's winning despite himself. And it's so easy to at least take care of that. Eat the right things and hopefully supplement it with the working regimen.
Jennifer Capriati has grown up in the public eye. She played her first professional tournament before she even turned 14 and has been scrutinized by the media ever since. But Jennifer has tremendous talent, and by the time she was 16, she had already won an Olympic gold medal and had been in the semifinals of 3 of the 4 Grand Slams. She has some of the most powerful ground strokes on the tour, and if you let her establish a rhythm, she can blast you off the court.
I like my backhand. I think that's my strongest shot. I definitely like hitting that better than any other shot. Also, I like, you know, using that or using the backhanding when people come to net. You know, I like hitting passing shots because it gives me like a target.
Joe Fernandez believes you have to do something to disrupt Jennifer, to keep her from controlling a match with aggression from the baseline.
Jennifer hits the ball very hard. I think she plays, you know, one way all the time, one speed. So if you can try to mix up the pace a little bit, hit some slices, hit some lobs, get her out of her rhythm, then and that usually works sometimes.
Breaking up Jennifer's rhythm is only one of the problems for the other players against Capriati. Another is her serve.
Well, Jennifer is, I mean, for her age, she's just playing unbelievable. I mean, the strength that she gets on her ground strokes and her serve, her movement. I would again say both sides are very good. I could not say that, you know, you play to Jennifer's one side and you win the match. So, and I think lately, the last few years, her serve has been great. I mean, it's one of the top women's serves, you know.
Jennifer's ground strokes are my favorite part of her game, but as Monica Seles said earlier, Capriati has one of the best serves in women's tennis. To many of you club players who like to hit hard from the baseline, Jennifer can show you the value of adding a bigger serve to your game. If you can use your upper body strength the way Jennifer can, you can get a lot of good pace on your serve. She starts off with a smooth motion, which every good server must have. Her toss is just out in front of her body and not too high, so Jennifer is leaning into the court at contact and her weight shifting forward. With this fine balance, she gets her power not just from her arm, but from her entire body. Above all, Jennifer proves that you don't have to follow your serve to the net to make it a powerful weapon. Win or lose, Jennifer wants to enjoy her tennis. With so much expected of her, it isn't always easy. But she has the right goal for herself in the long run.
Whatever your dreams may be, that, you know, it will come, and it's not going to come easy, that's for sure. So you have to, you know, work at it, and don't let anybody, like, put you down. And just keep believing in yourself and still stick by what, you know, your goals are and what your dreams are, and do it for yourself.
Joe Fernandez is one of the most dependable players in the women's game. She is very professional, works hard, and she hardly ever plays a bad match. That's because she knows how to train and prepare.
The day of a match, I pretty much don't try to do too many things. I don't want to get tired before I play. I probably eat about 3 hours before. I'll hit about 40 minutes to warm up. And then basically just I'm pretty much by myself or talk to my coach a little bit, see a little bit of a strategy for my match, and then just wait, just try to focus and get ready to play.
Joe does not have one big weapon, but her game holds up since she is so solid with her ground strokes and she concentrates so well.
Oh, well, I think Joe's ground strokes are incredible. I mean, again, you do not say one side is better than the other. She's probably one of the most consistent players. She doesn't make too many on first air, so you gotta pretty much win a point against her. She's attacking quite often. She's coming to a net. Her serve is very tough. It stays very low, and you know, she's just a tough player, and she's very strong mentally also.
Jennifer gives Joe credit for hitting her ground strokes with great depth.
She is consistent, very consistent, and you know, when she's really on her strokes, they're good. They pin you back on the baseline. She can hit from corner to corner, and also, you know, she has a good drop shot that she can mix in well, disguises it well.
Jennifer mentioned Joe's drop shot, which is one of the best in the game. That shot adds a lot of variety to her game, and it's hard for her opponents to anticipate when Joe might use it. Joe wants to take more risks than she has in the past.
When I was little, that's the way I was taught. I was taught, you know, not to miss many balls, to hit as many balls in the court in a row as I could. So all our drills were based on, you know, hitting one more ball back. And, you know, now actually my coach is trying to get me a little bit away from that, trying to get me, you know, to play more aggressive, take more chances, make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. My mentality, you know, growing up was it's wrong to make mistakes and, you know, don't do that and that, you know, that's wrong. And now I'm seeing that you know, it's okay. You have to go for shots and take chances.
Mary Jo is a very solid player from the baseline, and both her two-handed backhand and her forehand are clean and classic strokes. But let's get a final lesson from her on the forehand. Mary Jo takes the racket almost straight back and hits a basically flat stroke. She has excellent footwork and racket preparation, gets sideways to the net quickly, and her racket is always back early. Her contact point is out in front of her body, and she can go cross-court or down the line with the same efficiency. The lesson to learn from Mary Jo is how you can take command of your forehand and go for your shots without making too many errors. Unless she is going for an outright winner, she gives herself plenty of margin for error. With this style, she forces a lot of errors from her opponents. She plays the percentages with her forehand until she has a clear opening for a winning shot. So that wraps up our segment on the superstars in singles. But since so many of you play doubles, we thought you might like some guidance in that area of the game from two of the best doubles players I've played with and against, Pam Shriver and Wendy Turnbull. Pam won 20 Grand Slam titles with Martina Navratilova, and she took the 1991 U.S. Open title with Natalia Zvereva. And Wendy won 9 Grand Slam titles in her career. Both Pam and Wendy know what it takes to play good doubles. So let me turn this topic over to them.
I always, when people ask me if there's one thing that's most important, I tend to think it's communication, chemistry between the two people. It's like any partnership. If you get along well, you talk well, then you can have better results. You got to be able to serve well, get a lot of first serves in, make solid first volleys, understand the finer points like when to lob, when to poach, when to fake and stay, to try and, you know, you're always trying to get in your opponent's brain, trying to like mess them up in their head. Like, you want them to be thinking about what you're doing as much as possible. Martina and I, most of our career, I have played the forehand side of the court, the right side. Martina's played the left side. That's kept our backhand volleys up the center of the court, which has been a little bit of a detriment because sometimes it's easier to poach if your forehand volley's in the center. Martina, being as great as she is, a champion, she's won every tournament, I don't know how many times, and won 160 craft tour events. I wanted her, I think it's important that she play the ad side where the big break points are. And you know, I think obviously if she's won 9 Wimbledon singles titles, that she can handle the pressure of break points a little better than I might.
I think a difference between a top doubles team and just, you know, one of the pack is that doubles is such a completely different game to singles, and you use so many angles. It's a much different game tactically. Very important to get your first serve in play, a high percentage of first serves in, and to get to the net. You know, you want to dictate play at the net, and you know, I always love to volley. So I think it's important to be up there and have a good overhead.
The great thing about Wendy and Pam as doubles players is their finesse rather than power. They always know what they're doing and play with a specific strategy in mind. Wendy knew how to take advantage of her strengths and play within herself, which is something every doubles player at every level should strive to do.
Well, when I was playing doubles, I never had one huge shot, so I relied a lot on angles and getting the balls at my opponent's feet. And, you know, I sort of had a little dink shot that sometimes I disguised it so well that sometimes I could hit a lob. So my opponents were like wondering, is it going to be a little short ball at my feet or is it going to be a lob? And that always helped me a lot because they couldn't close in too much, otherwise I could lob them. And if they started backing up, then I would dink them. And that enabled me to get to the net then. But I was always trying to open up the court somehow and get my opponents away from the net.
Wendy Marty and Pam have given you some very good guidelines for doubles. Get your first serve in. Make a solid first volley. Keep the ball low, especially on your return of serve. Disguise your lobs, and always communicate with your partner and be supportive of each other. We've talked a lot about the superstars of the women's game, but how do you define a superstar, and what does it take to become one? Bud Collins just may have the answers.
What makes a superstar is not only the aura surrounding the player, it's a player with a great commitment to excellence. You can see that. And if you're committed to excellence, you want to win more and more and more major championships. And the only way you can do that is by sticking around.
So that wraps things up for the superstars of today in women's tennis. But before we know it, the superstars of tomorrow will be on their way, ready to take over from the current champions. That is what makes the game of tennis so much fun and so interesting. You never know what's going to happen next, but you can always guess. And we will wonder now what will happen with a very promising player from California named Venus Williams. I don't envy Venus. She has already been built up in the press, much like Jennifer Capriati was the year before she turned pro. It isn't easy for her or any other potential superstar to live up to all of the advanced publicity and expectations. Still, Venus seems like a very bright and sensitive girl, and I hope she can handle all the attention. Venus seems to be getting good guidance from her parents, and I'm sure they understand how important it is for them to be supportive and understanding of Venus as she makes her climb up the ladder. In my time, I've seen countless players who had great shot-making ability, but for one reason or another did not have the ability to concentrate or the willpower to win when things were not going their way. I knew in my case that concentration and mental toughness were crucial to my success. I won a lot of big tennis matches and big titles because I wanted to come through more than just about anybody else. In the end, no matter how much talent a player has, determination is very essential. I hope you've enjoyed getting to know more about the superstars of women's tennis. I know I've enjoyed being your host. Keep watching these women and keep learning from them. And yes, that goes for you men watching too. Every tennis player can learn a lot from this group of champions. And who knows, maybe some of their success will rub off on you. Good luck with your tennis. Thanks for joining us.